Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and today I'm going to work on one of the reels that I got on the Facebook Marketplace find. This one is a beautiful reel. It kind of caught my attention when I was making a bid for the group of reels. There were two reels in there that I had of interest. One of them was this reel, and the other was the Newell reel. And we're going to show you how this reel is made. We're going to give you an idea about it, and if you find one of these, I think if you're an enthusiast, you might just want to go ahead and get that reel because it is a beauty. This one's a Tica reel, and it was the Tica Gemini GN300. It was made about 8, 9 years ago, and I believe it was manufactured in China. It is, because somebody, for whatever reason, is never proud of that and always rips off the seal on the bottom of them. This one appears to be unused or very close to unused. I'm sure it was used. I talked to the owner. You can see some indications. There's some little wear on the handle. But these are decals, right? So it's a decal. It says 4.7 to 1, line capacity 17,420, 4-ball bearing reel. This is a decal on this side, and it remains complete and nice and shiny with no nicks or that. So those are the things that generally will wear on a reel pretty quickly if it's in use, and it's particularly if it's used in fighting a lot of fish. But this one is near new, turns free and easy. But we're going to take this apart. We're going to show you how this reel is made. We'll show you how to service it, because whenever I pick up a reel that I'm unfamiliar with, I want to go ahead and do the service anyway, just because it's one of those things that I'm not comfortable if I put it out there for sale. I'm just not comfortable representing it as something that I've worked on, or that if in fact I haven't done that, and I'm not into flipping reels. Okay, we want to start by removing the pieces. This handle has got a little clip shield in it. It's very much like a Shakespeare used to do with their SKP models on their bait casters. And you got to come in from behind and just put a little bit of pressure on the two wing clips that are there, and that should be enough to move them out for you. Sometimes you'll find on these reels that the clips are just gone because either somebody snapped them off because they didn't know quite how to take this off, or they fell out because they weren't installed properly on the way back in. So we're just kind of working on that right now in terms of getting those out. There we go. And you can see those two clips that I'm referring to. So as I take apart the exterior pieces on this reel, I want to thank our first responders and essential personnel, and everybody who's keeping us safe during this pandemic. Your efforts truly are appreciated. Everything that you do, we know you do from the goodness of your heart, and that you're working out there tirelessly as we kind of keep getting a different variant, and just when we think we're clear and free, something else comes up that will just kind of put us back a step. And of course, I'm referring to that Delta variant today. So thank you for everything that you do. It is appreciated. This is a good time to tell you to take pictures along the way. There's some things going on in here. We had mentioned the wing clips. I was just searching for my 10mm wrench to take this handle off. And there's a little clip that's kind of hanging down in here. It's a little tension washer. My big hands are probably getting in the way of what's going on here. I believe it's a clicker, actually, the way it works. But you'll see here now, when I take that nut off, there's this round copper kind of a thing. And on the back end of it, you can see a click tongue there. It might be a little bit difficult to see, but there's a click tongue. Just make sure if that piece comes free that you recognize how it goes. Then we have the next buffer here, and that has the ridges on it that click tongue is going to ride on. And then that has one single stud on the back end of it. It has a spring between it and the star adjuster, and that single stud is going to ride in that hole on your star adjuster. So just make sure you take note of that, and like I said, take some pictures along the way. It's an easier way to get this done. I'm going to remove the star adjuster now. You do that by turning it in a counterclockwise fashion, or somebody told me with all digital people don't understand what counterclockwise is. Well, turn the turn the nut towards you. Hold it that way and turn the nut towards you, and clockwise would be turning the nut away from you. So take care of that, get that off. And there's a stack of tension washers in here. There's 3 of them, and those tension washers account for the tension on the star adjuster itself. So it actually is a 4th one going in there. I was going to say 3 is kind of an odd number. These are what I call thumb screws. You can take them out by hand once loosened. That one was loose already. Now, the fellow I got these from took very good care of the reels that he was selling me. He just said, I have too many of these, and I just need to start kind of moving on, getting these back into service, and it was an ideal situation for me. Just took the side plate off. We're going to take that cover off in a moment. We have a spool here. We have a big drive for that line guide. This is Teflon. You don't need to do anything with that. There's a bearing in the case underneath that. You do want to oil that bearing case in the case. This reel is totally clean, so there's nothing about cleaning here that you need to do. If there was, you can take these screws, these 3 screws out, or 4 screws. There's another one down here. I'm not sure which 3 is going to hold what, but you take those screws out, and that will remove this side cover. For a basic cleanup and tune-up of the reel, that is in good condition. All you want to do is put a drop of oil on that Teflon, and you don't even need to do that. Teflon is self-lubricating. It's an oil product. You could, so you want to get the bearing oiled on that side, and if you like, a drop of oil onto the Teflon drive. I took the bearing cap off, the pawl cover cap off, because I want to get that pawl out. Again, I don't know the reel when I make some purchases, so I want to know the reel before I represent it as whatever it is, if I am going to sell that reel. This one has grease on it. I'm not a fan of grease on pawls. I much prefer oil. And you can see what happens here with grease. Grease will accumulate on the shoulders of that pawl. Grease will hold dirt. Not that this reel has got a lot of dirt on it, but grease will hold the dirt, trap it there, and then what happens is this little Y-shaped top of the pawl rides in the groove of the worm gear. Kind of hard to see the grooves of the worm gear. And if this gets choked with too much dirt or dried grease, then what happens next is that the reel starts to skip or bog down in performance. All right, we did that, so we're going to go ahead and put that pawl back in. I like to try and move it so that it's flat or flush. That means that the teeth are in the worm drive. Put a little bit of oil onto that. And then I'm going to close that up by reinstalling the pawl cover. I like to do that by hand. These are generally plastic parts, and you want to make sure that they move. And if you over tighten them, sometimes they will crack, particularly on Shimano reels. This is not a Shimano reel, this is a Tica reel. But Shimano has these little bumps on the pawl cap, and if you over tighten, they snap, and then you're in trouble. This one's running fine. So Tica US is headquartered up in Washington, and I believe the reels are actually made in Taiwan. And Taiwan, of course, is now, we would call it a disputed territory, I guess, but it's part of the Republic of China, so we can certainly put made in China on there. And but it's a nice quality product. All right, this side of the reel is done. I'm going to take a look over here and just make sure that we know what's going on. This has got brakes on it. There's 2 brakes here. You can pull them out or push them in. That's going to control the spool speed. All you need to do on this is make sure that the stud that goes into the bearing is clean, and you can put a little bit of grease onto that. So I'm going to go grab my grease brush and do just that. Those brakes ride in this ring, so you need to make sure when you put the spool in that the brakes are not overextended, because if they become overextended, then you're going to have trouble fitting it in the ring. And then I'm going to get somebody sending me a reel because the reel performance doesn't work. Just cleaning the spool while I have it out. There was a little bit of dirt on there. Initially I thought maybe it was salt buildup, but it just looks like dirt. Okay, on this side we have a bearing. I'm going to spin that bearing, make sure that it spins fine. It does. I did a pre-test on this before we started taking this apart. So you oil that bearing. If you needed to remove that bearing, there's a pin here. You would push that pin out. They make a bearing puller for that. And if you just wanted to get creative, you could press that out with the pliers to solve the same thing. I'm going to put this back in. We're going to go pay attention to the business side of this reel, which is the gear side. We have a spool adjuster cap. You don't need to do anything with that. These three are the frame screws, so there's only 2 screws here that are holding that side cap on. Just checking on the back. Every now and then you'll hide a screw in the back there. Let's go ahead and take these out. These are Phillips head. I'm noticing 2 more of those tension washers are going to come out, so before I lose these, I'm just going to take those out, and I'm going to put those with the other tension washers inside that star adjuster. So it looks like there's 5 in total on that. Take the first one out, and then we'll take the second cover out. And while we're doing that, I would like to encourage you to subscribe to my channel if you're enjoying this, if you've stayed with me this far, and you're interested in the hobby of reel repair, or seeing reels worked on, or even understanding how reels are made, or even who's making those reels from a manufacturer standpoint, etc. Then subscribing is the best way. And if you do subscribe, using the notification button is a great way to see all the videos that I post, and make the selection for which ones you'd like to watch. I do everything from saltwater to freshwater, all kinds of different approaches, and I do the classics, the vintage reels, in addition to doing the new reels as well. This case should come out now. Just trying to get the right leverage here. There we go. If you don't work on the reel much, the first thing you want to do is just kind of get a sense of what's going on in the reel. That way you can figure it out. There's a sleeve here and an anti-reverse bearing inside the case. You do not need to do anything with that anti-reverse clutch other than make sure it's clean. Don't oil it. If you're oiling that, you may wind up in trouble. Okay, we have a floater here. There's 2 pins that the case kind of floats on, so pull them out. Then we have our main gear. I'll take that and put that on the side here. We have 2 big springs. I want to get rid of these right away. I want to put those into my parts tray. My parts tray is nothing more than the bottom of a jug, plastic jug. Then it looks like we have our yoke assembly with our pinion drive. So this is all kind of common approaches. The pieces and parts may look a little different, but it's kind of common. I have a click ratchet. I'm going to put that there. And then I believe there's going to be a bearing hiding in here. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this C-clip here. And be very careful with these C-clips. They tend to fly. And if you find yourself stuck with one of these flying somewhere, you may not be able to find a replacement. So just very cautious and very gentle as you come in and out with these clips. Especially on a reel that's getting up in age, you may not be able to find that part. And I almost have it now. There we go. So I've removed that C-clip, or E-clip. I always call them C-clips, but there may be any of a number of things. That's the clip. That's going to go into the tray so I don't lose that. There's generally a little copper washer behind there. And we should be able to pull this side out now, and sure enough there was a bearing under there, so that's why you wanted to do that. Now I didn't pull a schematic on this. I imagine that they're out there somewhere, but that's always a good thing to do. Give it a spin, put some oil on there. I oil bearings, I don't grease bearings. For the same reason we were talking about before with the pawl. I don't want the oils and greases clogging up. And I'm just going to turn right around and put that right back in before I lose something. And I'm going to go get that little clip out of my parts tray, and we'll go put that back in. So if you have any questions on fishing reels, I'm not going to say I'm an expert, but I will try and answer your questions. If you're out there working on these, maybe you're stuck, maybe you started a repair and you didn't take pictures or don't have the schematic, or something went bump in the night, I will try and get you back on track. If I know the answer, that's great. If not, there's a lot of folks on this forum that are smarter than I am. They know all about that stuff, and maybe they can chip in if I say I don't know the answer. Not maybe, they can chip in, and they do help quite a bit. Okay, so that took care of that. Now we have our yoke and our pinion gear. So we clean that up with the old grease, and that's probably the only issue I'm seeing here, is that the grease is dried, and that's fairly common for a reel this age, especially when it's probably just been sitting. It looks like it's been sitting in storage. The fellow told me he got it, he liked it, but he hasn't used it much, and I think that's apparent from what I'm looking at here. This reel just has not had a lot of use to it. Okay, so the side of the pinion gear with the plus sign, or the two opposing slots, that goes towards the inside of the reel there, because that's going to grab the shaft that's coming through here on your spool, and it's going to drive that. The outside of that then is going to be for the other piece. We can put this on now. You want to make sure it's clean. There's a little bit of dirt inside there, so we'll get rid of that. That's just some grease that the centrifugal force, I think I have that right, it was on the main gear, got thrown off. Pay attention to your drag sequence here. And these look like fabric washers, so we're going to just make sure that they get a nice coat of new grease after the old grease is cleaned off. And you'll notice I'm using a pick here. It's just an easy way for me to get some of the harder pieces out of there without damaging anything. Alright, we have one on the back here too. That's a little bit smaller. So I want to clean all of that old grease off of here. So I'm going to use Cal's Universal Dry Grease for this. If you don't have the grease, don't run out and get it. You can use regular fishing reel grease, but please make sure it's fishing reel grease. Okay, we're going to take our click ratchet next. We're going to install that. That's what's going to trip the free spool lever and push it back up. We're going to put that drag washer on, the small one first, and then we're going to look at the main gear. There's some dry grease in the main gear, so go ahead and get a brush or something, get that out of there. I use a brush when it's just appears to be loose. If it's hard and really choked with grease, then go ahead and maybe use a pick. You can use a razor blade, you can use all kinds of things, but in this case, that's the only thing in there is a little tarnish. And then we want to get a good dose of grease on there. I do use an artist's brush to spread the grease. You don't have to use that. Anything will kind of work, but if you do use it, just check every now and then, make sure that there aren't any hairs coming off that brush. Obviously that will affect the performance of the reel. Well, I just put that little carrier in there too quickly. So we're going to grab that carrier and get that out of there. Once it's seated, now I can go back in and put that little shield in. I'm doing that off camera, I apologize. There we go. Alright, so that little, it's a stubborn little thing, isn't it? I'm going to put a little bit of grease on the back of this to act as a glue. That should kind of hold it in place. Okay, that's where we need to be with that. If it falls out again, that's not a problem. We know what to do. So these drag washers stack up with a interesting little sequence here. This one was facing up. So first we have a solid, actually we have the one with the eared was first, kind of reverse. And there's two holes in the the main gear there, and those slots and the drag washer fit into those holes. Next we had a face forward one. Where we had the clip facing up on the metal one. Then we had a secondary one. Now those holes on the second I have that backwards. And that little guy just distracted me. These go up in sequence or go down in sequence in terms of the size of the hole. You want to do that one because those two pegs on that upward facing washer go inside. Now this one goes down into that gap. So it has the two tags. And this is the last one. And that's the smallest of the diameters of those. And then this one sits going in. And it accepts the, I believe it goes the other way, I'm sorry. Yep, goes in. And that accepts the two prongs for that anti-reverse clutch sleeve. And I like to put these on this way. Oops, this one is upside down. So there's a star here. These two tags go into the holes, and those two little studs come into the slots. And that's going to hold it. There you go. My old friend here is back for the case, but that's all right because it's almost time to put the case back together. So one of the things you need when you do real repair is patience. And this little piece of the case here is kind of a patience tester. We have those two big ones coming in now, those two big springs. I checked before this whole free spool mechanism is firing fine. I'm just going to use oil then. It's very clean. You don't need to do anything with that. But just get oil around the posts where it's going to move. At some point you might want to test that, but testing it is at the risk of a whole bunch of springs. Here's two of them here. Let me do a close-up of that. In case you're working on this reel and maybe you've lost these springs, you can see there that the one spring that controls that arm nests in the top stud and comes from underneath there. This one nests in the side plate here, rolls around, and nests on this this carrier arm here. Okay, one more time with this darn little piece here. Alright, now we can put that case back on. Case has been cleaned on the inside. There's a ball bearing up here in that spool thing that I almost overlooked, so let's put oil on that. And then we can close this up. You need to know that you've got that slot there and slot here, so kind of aim directly in that direction. And we're going to get that piece in here yet. Alright, so one of my things is about design, and whoever designed this, I don't give them high marks in terms of that. I understand what you need in terms of the bump out for the bigger gear than the case, but I'm not a fan of how this little thing sits. It's important to be in the slots on this lower piece. Once you do that, everything should pretty much come together. Then come on up top, make sure you're in the slots for that free spool release. And that's what I like to hear, is a nice solid snap when I'm putting a case together. There were two side plate screws then. That would be next. So if you're liking this video, please indicate that with a like on the video itself. And if you have a reel that needs to be repaired, well, I do that too. I repair reels by mail. And if you contact me on the information on the business card that follows, I'll be happy to provide you with that information. I work on bait casters, spinning reels, low profile reels, saltwater reels, trolling reels, all kinds of reels. And if you have one that you're not up for working on yourself, well, just let me know and I'll get you that repair information. Okay, so once you've put that star adjuster back on, it's always a good idea to give it a spin right now before you do too much. Make sure that you're driving the reel. Make sure that your cast button is releasing on free spool mode, which it is, doing nicely. And one of the things I may or may not have mentioned, you do need to follow the orientation on this piece. This piece is removable, it can come off. And if you have it off, make sure that you are proud of the case here when you go to reinstall, because there's a lip you're going to put this back on that needs to sit over. So let's go ahead and put it back on then. So just basically align your reel with the screw holes, tighten up the screw holes. We have those, what I call the thumb screws, so make sure that those seat properly. One more of these down below. And then what I generally like to do with these after I've hand tightened them is just a quarter turn, just to make sure that they're seated. That's plenty. You'll feel when they're snug. And again, we can give that a ride at this point. What a beautiful reel this is. Okay, so now we got to go back and set the rest of this up. It wasn't that difficult. We had the little noisemaker up top here that sits in that hole, just like that. Before we do that, we had the spring. This is where pictures help. Now we have the noisemaker in that hole, and you got to compress that a little bit. Then the handle goes on next. Here's your little noisemaker. Remember I said that copper spring could come out. So let's make sure your stud is in the hole. And we have the noisemaker on that little copper spring, so get that over so it's seated properly, just like that. And we have our 10mm nut. Again, hand start these. They're real easy to cross strip, which is what I'm doing right now, cross stripping them. So before you do any damage to that gear post, make sure that you got it going on square. I think we got it now. Yep, we do. Don't bring any wrenches or anything to the game until you know that you've got it working properly. Okay, now we just want to tighten this up and we'll get that cover back on. Generally speaking, if you have the two flat sides even with that piece, then you should be able to get the cover back on. Snaps in just like that. We're off to the races here. What a beautiful reel. Okay, tighten it down. We got that noisemaker. You can hear it. Take it for a spin. Give it a cast. So that's it. That's your Tica Gemini GN300. Nice little reel. Part of that Facebook Marketplace finds. I hope you've enjoyed the video. This is Dennis wishing you a safe journey through COVID. Please stay well, stay healthy, and stay fishing. And of course, stay watching. Have a great day.